Welcome to this video looking at the history of Westwick Street in yellow and Coslany Street in green. Coslany Street used to run further than it currently does, having taken in what is now Oak Street as far as St Mary's Plain. Both streets are named after Anglo-Saxon settlements which would eventually merge with others to form Norwich. We'll begin here at the city end of Westwick Street. This wall on the northern side of Westwick Street once housed Gibson's pump. A public spring rose near this spot, and in 1576 it was granted to Robert Gibson on condition he piped the water to the street. If you go through the gap in the wall, you can find the current location of the pump, where it was relocated in the 1980s. If we return back onto Westwick Street, across the road is this building, which was the Victoria Porter Vaults pub until 1912, this photo dating from 1985. Opposite, this is the former Bullard's Brewery, taken over by Watney's in 1963 and closing in 1969. It became the office of Municipal Mutual and is now residential, known as Anchor Quay. Into Coslany Street, this is within the Anchor Quay development, having been the Anchor Brewery Stores pub until 1965 and subsequently a wine bar. This photo dates from 1984. This is the view across Coslany Bridge, dating originally from 1186, the present one dating from 1804. On the opposite side was Barnard, Bishop and Barnard's Ironworks, seen from the bridge in this early 20th century photo, the current equivalent today looking like this. The Barnard name is retained in the housing which now occupies the site. This is a general view of Coslany Street in 2024, compared to how it looked both in the 1940s and in this 19th century painting by Edward Pocock. Towards the end of Coslany Street, this housing occupies the site of what was the Red Lion pub until it closed in 1970. Returning towards Westwick Street, we can see the Anchor Brewery site across the bridge and St Lawrence's Church behind that, with this historic comparison from 1973. Here is a closer view of the former brewery and of the church. This is the view of the corner of Westwick Street and Coslany Street, with the 1936 equivalent seen here just before its demolition. Nearby, Hellgate Court housing recalls the name of a gate in the city wall situated at the western end of Westwick Street. The right-hand side of this building was the site of the St Margaret Stalls pub, seen here in 1936 and closed by 1939. Next door to this pub were numbers 50 to 52 Westwick Street. Look very closely at where that man is and you might just make out an entrance to Waterman's Yard. That name and entrance are retained today in this modern redevelopment. Go through the arch and look back towards Westwick Street and it looks like this today compared to this 1937 equivalent. Go back through onto Westwick Street and it looks like this, the grass traffic island and St Smithins Road immediately behind it being the site of the Colchester Arms pub, which had closed 100 years ago in 1924. Next to Waterman's Yard on the left of the photo we would have found numbers 54 to 58 Westwick Street, seen here in 1936, and looking back towards the city in the location of those boards, the 1936 view would have looked like this, numbers 68 to 72 Westwick Street. Looking out of the city at those boards, the 1936 view would have been like this. This is number 86, which 3 years later was being demolished. A little further along, just before New Mills Yard, the right-hand side of the tile and stone building was the site of the new Brewery Public House, seen here in 1939, just before its closure in 1941. If we cross the river by going through New Mills Yard and looking back at the development site behind those boards we saw earlier, this is the current view, whereas in 2020 it had been the site of the BT repeater station now demolished. Heading back towards Westwick Street, this plaque, sadly vandalised, shows flood levels over time, and this is it in 1961 before graffiti became the scourge it now is. The boy in the photo is George Plunkett's son. We'll have a look at a flood scene later, but now looking across Westwick Street from New Mills Yard shows the Cathedral Retail Park, which had been the site of the Wincarnis works seen here in 1937, which had been produced in Norwich since the 1880s. We are now slightly further up near the end of Westwick Street, and this was the location of the Maidment Shoe Factory, seen here in 1932, having been gutted by fire. Opposite and at the very end of Westwick Street, actually located on the present-day Barn Road, was the Norwich Corporation Westwick Depot, known as the Monkey House, and destroyed in the air raids of 1942. Returning towards the city centre and looking back at the site which had been the repeater station, we can look forward in time. This equivalent view shows the anticipated look of the development site in the future. And from the future we go back to the distant past when this same area was hit by the floods of 1912. Thanks very much for watching.